ለመማር ወደ ትምህርት ተቋም መሄድ ግድ አይደለም። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
ራሳችሁን ከኮሮና ቫይረስ ወረርሽኝ እየጠበቃችሁ በቤታችሁ ወይም በተመቻችሁ ቦታ በኢንተርኔት አማካኝነት በኦንላይን ትምህርታችሁን መከታተል ትችላላችሁ።
ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ኢንስቲትዩት ኦፍ ኮመርሻል ማኔጅመንት ICM ጋር በመተባበር የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶችን ተከታትላችሁ በ6 ወር ጊዜ በዓለም አቀፍ ደረጃ ተቀባይነት ያለውን የስልጠና ማስረጃ ባለቤት መሆን ይቻላል።
ልምድ ባላቸው መምህራን እየተማራችሁ ጥያቄና መልስ የክፍል ስራዎች ፈተና መፈተን ክፍል ውስጥ እንዳላችሁት አይነት በኦንላይን ባላችሁበት ቦታ ከናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ
Okay, good evening. Today we are going to see chapter 5. This course has 6 chapters and we are now at the chapter 5. Chapter 5 is all about the data analysis, interpretation, presentation techniques. Let's begin by defining data analysis. Data analysis, it can be defined as the process of cleaning, the process of transforming, modeling data in order to discover useful information for business decision making. The purpose of data analysis is to extract useful information from the data and taking a decision based on this data. We can also rephrase this definition as data analysis is the process of collecting and organizing data in order to draw useful conclusion from it. Because by the end of the day, the use of the data is to generate information. Therefore, it is a process of collecting, it is a process of organizing data in a way of making conclusions. The process of data analysis uses analytical and logical reasoning. Let's share one material. Okay. Let's see this. The data analysis is used in business to help organizations make better business decisions, whether it is market research or product research or positioning of customers review or sentimental analysis or any other issue related to the business. Data exists and it has to be analyzed. The analyzed data will provide insight to that organization, and based on this insights that is generated from the data, you make choices or decisions. Therefore, data analytics is important for business, for any type of business, because data-driven choices are to be made only. It is the only way for a better business. It is the only way for making a good decision or choice in the making of the business. Some successful business may be created on a hunch, but almost all successful businesses, they have to make choices based on data, or based on data gathered through different instruments. The types of data analysis, as you can see it from the slide, there are different types of data analysis techniques. However, the major types of data analysis include text analysis. See it. Yeah, textual method. statistical method, or diagnostic analysis, predictive analysis, and prescriptive analysis. These different types of data analysis are presented in these forms: textual, tabular, or graphic methods. Let's see one by one. Let's start with textual method. As you can hear from the slide, you can follow me from the slide. Textual analysis it is also renamed as data mining. It is a method to discover a pattern. It is a method of discovering pattern in a large data. Therefore, textual method is used to transform raw materials or raw data into business information. From this raw data, you make or you formulate the business information related to your institution or organization. The other is statistical analysis. This shows what happens. Statistical analysis shows what happens. Therefore, by using data from the dashboard, it answers to the question, what happens in the business process? Statistical analysis includes collection, analysis, and interpretation of data. It also includes the presentation and modeling of data. In analysis, in the statistical analysis, the analysis is a set of data or a sample of data. There are two different ways of statistical analysis: descriptive analysis and inferential analysis. Descriptive analytics. In descriptive analysis, the question that you have to answer is what is happening. What is happening? Descriptive analysis, it analyzes complete data or a sample of summarized numerical data. It also shows the mean and deviation. These are important words, mean and deviation, that you use in the process of analysis, making analysis. Descriptive analysis shows the mean and deviation, in a continuous data. Whereas inferential analysis, it analyzes samples from complete data. It is from this sample that you infer your analysis. In this type of analysis, you can find different conclusions from the same data by selecting different samples, because you are going to take part of the sample. Therefore, you can find different conclusions in the inferential analysis. As its name indicates, inferential analysis, it is based on sample, and based on the sample you make interpretation or analysis. The other way of analyzing data is diagnostic analysis. Here in diagnostic analysis, the question that you have to answer is, why did it happen? Here in the descriptive analysis, you answer the question, what is happening? Then you go inside and you ask question, why did it happen? Why did it happen? Therefore, diagnostic analysis shows why did it happen. The analysis is useful to identify behavioral pattern of data. It shows you the behavioral pattern of the data. If new problems arrive or came in your business process, then we can look into this analysis to find similar patterns of the problem. And if there are similar patterns of problem, this may have the chance of using the same prescription, the same solution for the new problems, The other way of analyzing is predictive analysis. Predictive, as the name indicates, it is you make assumptions. You make assumptions in predictive analysis. Therefore, the question that you have to answer is, what is likely to happen? Therefore, this is another question. The answer is going to be given in the form of assumption. What is likely to happen in the future? This is predictive analysis. Therefore, in your predictive analysis has to show what is likely to happen by using previous data. Here, the base for your interpretation is the previous data, or it could also be the current information. But based on this current and past information, you make predictions, you make assumptions. Your assumptions could be different. They may not be right. However, based on the existing information, you make predictions. For example, let's take one example. If last year you bought two dresses based on your savings, and if your salary increases double in this year, then you may buy 4 dresses, because in the previous using the previous salary or using the previous saving, you buy 2 clothes. And in this year, because your salary is doubling, you may buy 4 clothes. But this may not be right. The prediction or the analysis that you make may not be right, because there are different likely choices. Instead of dresses, you may prefer to buy other things. Therefore, the increase of your salary doesn't show your increase in the buying of dresses. Therefore, you have also to consider while you make predictive analysis, you have also to consider other factors. You have to see the other factors, other choices. Therefore, in this analysis, in the predictive analysis, you make predictions about future outcome based on current and past data. Therefore, this is a forecasting. Forecasting is simply an estimation. The other way of analysis is data analysis, prescriptive analysis. Here, you make solution for the problems. Therefore, the question that you have to answer in this section is, what should I do about this? What should I do about the problem? Therefore, you give prescription or solutions for the existing problem. Therefore, prescriptive analysis combines the insights from all previous analysis to determine what actions you should take for the current problem and what decisions you should make to address the current problem. Most data-driven companies, they use prescriptive analysis, because predictive and descriptive analysis are not enough to improve the performance of the organization. Therefore, companies, based on their current situation and problems, they analyze the data and make decisions. This is prescriptive analytics. Prescriptive analytics. It is also, you can also see from this other slide. I'll share with the slide. Descriptive answers the question what's happening in the business. Diagnostic, it answers why is it happening. And predictive, it predicts or it forecasts what is likely to happen. And the prescriptive analysis, it answers to the question, what do I need to do, or what solution should I give for the existing problem. The data analysis problem, however, it entails several processes. It has several processes. The data analysis process is nothing but gathering information by using proper application of tools that can allow you to explore data and find patterns. Based on that information and the data, you can make a decision or you can go into conclusion. The data analysis consists of several phases. The first phase is with data requirement gathering. Data requirement gathering. What kind of data should I gather? And how all these things should be addressed in the data requirement gatherings. The second phase is the data collection. We collect the data through various sources that we have discussed in the previous chapter when we discuss about the sources of data. We see the primary and secondary sources of data. Therefore, you collect data from different sources. The third stage is, or the third phase is data cleaning. You gather data in bulk. But this data, all this data, they may not be useful for your research. Therefore, you have to clean, you have to select and clean your priorities. Therefore, after data collection came data cleaning. All data may not be useful. Therefore, they have to be cleaned. And the data has to be error-free before making any analysis. The next phase is data analysis. Data analysis. This is an important point. Once the data is collected and cleaned, the next step is to make analysis. During this phase, however, you can use data analysis tools and softwares. There are several softwares that can help you to analyze your data or to interpret your data. Therefore, you can use different tools and softwares to analyze your data. Next to data analysis came the data interpretation. After making the analysis, you have to give interpretations. After analyzing your data, it is time to interpret the result. We have to interpret the result based on the analyzed data. You can choose the way to express or communicate your data analysis. Either you can use simply in words, or you may use tables and charts. There are different ways of presenting your data. You can see it here. You can use Word, or you can also present it in the tabular form or graphic methods, through tabular or graphic methods. The other important part of this chapter is data interpretation. In this data interpretation, let's first define it. Data interpretation, it refers to the implementation of the process, through which data is reviewed for the purpose of arriving at conclusion. You process the data, you review the data, and the final end of the reviewed data is conclusion. Therefore, the purpose of making reviews or analysis or interpretation is to arrive at conclusion. The interpretation of data assigns a meaning to the information. It gives a meaning to the information that is analyzed, and it determines the significance and implication of that information. Data interpretation is the process of making sense out of the collected data. You have collected several kinds of data, you have cleaned it, you have arranged it, then you interpret it to make sense out of this data, Therefore, it is the processing of the data in order to make a conclusion or decision. This collection, it can be presented in different ways. You can present your interpretation in graph, or bar graph, in line chart. You can present it in line chart. You can also present it in tabular form. You can also present it in this textual method, in the form of paragraphs or sentences. When interpreting data, an analyst or the analyst or the researcher have to try to differentiate or discern the differences between correlations, causations, and coincidences. These are the factors that alter your decision. You have to see the correlations of the data. You have also to see the causation. You have also to see the coincidences. The correlation, causation, and coincidences, they may affect your conclusions. Therefore, throughout making analysis, you have to pin out the correlation, or you have to discern the correlation, causation, and coincidences. And there can be also other biases. There are different types of biases in the making of, or in the process of making a research. But you have also to consider the factors involved, because these factors may have an effect on the result or on the conclusion of the research. There are various data interpretation methods. A researcher can use the qualitative or quantitative analysis, but under this quantitative and qualitative data interpretation methods, there are different interpretation methods. For example, in qualitative data interpretation, let's see, the qualitative data interpretation, there are also sub-branches of this qualitative data interpretation, like the observation, documentation, and interviews. Therefore, in qualitative data analysis, it can be summarized as in a way of categorical form. You have to categorize it in categorical form. The data should be interpreted in categories. With quantitative analysis, data is not described through numerical values. It is not described through numerical values. The interpretation is not made in numbers, in the form of numbers, rather in categories. Therefore, you are not supposed to make numerical value or pattern for your data, but through the use of descriptive context, you interpret your data. You interpret your data in descriptive contexts. For example, that is in texts. Typically, the textual method or narrative data is gathered by employing a wide variety of person-to-person technique. As we have seen in the previous chapter, observation involves the researcher, document analysis, interview. They involve the researcher much. Therefore, it employs a person-to-person technique. The qualitative data interpretation involves person-to-person technique. The major difference between qualitative and quantitative analysis is clearly noticed in the interpretation stage. At this stage, you can simply differentiate the quantitative and qualitative data, because the quantitative, it is presented or interpreted in the form of context, whereas in the quantitative it is numerical. Therefore, qualitative data, as it is widely open to interpretation, Therefore, to avoid such kind of different interpretation, it has to be coded. That's why we say it is categorical. As person-to-person data collection technique can result in disputes due to the different way of interpreting it. To avoid the dispute pertaining to the proper analysis, qualitative data analysis often summarized. It is often summarized. You can summarize the qualitative data through three basic principles. Simple principles. First, you have to notice of the data or the situation that you are researching. Then you collect information, data. Then you reason out about extracting the data. These are simple human principles. The second way of data interpretation is quantitative. This is a widely used method of interpretation. If quantitative data interpretation could be summarized, in the qualitative we have said it is categorical. Then qualitative in the interpretation of data is numerical. It is numerical, or we can simply put it as numerical data interpretation. Qualitative data analysis refers to the set of several stages of processes by which numerical data is analyzed. Quantitative data interpretation involves the use of a statistical model. For example, the standard deviation, mean, median. These are all technical words used in quantitative research. When you make the quantitative research, you have to be aware of these technical words: mean, deviation, median, and so on. Let's see what mean is and what deviation is. Let's see that. Mean. It can simply be referred as average. It can be represented as average. It is the average of whole numbers. Therefore, mean is it represents a numerical average for a set of responses. When dealing with data, a mean will represent the central value of a specific set of numbers. You may have different numbers, but the average or the central figure is the mean. Average is the mean. The other terms that can be used to describe the concept of mean are arithmetic mean, or average, or mathematical expectations. These are the other terms used instead of mean. But you can simply use, you can simply note it as an average. Standard deviation. This reveals the distribution of the responses. It shows the distribution of the responses around the mean. Therefore, standard deviation shows or it describes the degree of consistency. It shows the degree of consistency within the responses. The consistency within the responses. Frequency distribution is another technical term. This is a measurement showing the rate of response appearance. The rate of response appearance within data set is frequency distribution. Therefore, it shows the rate of response appearance. In frequency distribution, you use several ways or scales. For example, you can use strongly agree, disagree, such kind of scales. You can use these scales. Frequency distribution shows the degree of consensus. It shows the degree of consensus among the data points. Generally, quantitative data is measured by visually presenting correlation tests between two or more variables. And these have to be represented in numerical form. They have to be represented in numerical form. Different methods could be used. They can be used for the sake of comparison, or they can be used separately or together. The interpretation process in quantitative data may include regression analysis. It may include regression analysis or cohort analysis. It could also include the predictive and prescriptive analysis. These are somehow detailed informations in research. It may not be useful for this section. The third section in this chapter is data presentation. The data that you analyzed, interpret, you can present it, or you can make a data presentation in different forms. There are different ways of presenting data. Presenting data involves the use of a variety of different graphic techniques in order to visually show your reader the relationship between different data sets. To emphasize the nature of a particular aspect of the data, you make visual representation in this forms. The data presentation section is commonly written up while you make the data analysis. The method of presentation must be determined by the data format. It must be determined by the data format. If it is quantitative, it has to be presented in a quantitative form. And for the quantitative data, most of the time, the good way of presenting the data is in these forms: tables, pie charts, bar graphs, line graphs, and so on. Therefore, the method of presentation have to be based on the format of the data. A method of presentation must be chosen after clearly weighting different method of presentation. Each data presentation or presentation method has its own advantage and disadvantage. Therefore, you have to see the advantage and disadvantage before deciding on what method of presentation you are going to use. The method of data presentation can simply be categorized into three, as we have seen it in the previous slide. It can be presented in the textual method in the form of narrative descriptive, in the form of narrative descriptive of the data. You can present it in the textual source by using the textual method. The other way of presenting the data is tabular method. Tabular method is a systematic arrangement of information in columns and rows. Like this. Columns, you could have a different number of columns, or you could have different number of rows, which are horizontal. Therefore, based on your data format, you can use a tabular method of data presentation. The third way of, or the third method of presenting data is graphical method. Here you make illustrative descriptive of the data. Illustrative description of the data through different mechanisms. For example, you may use bar chart or histogram, frequency polygon, pie chart, and other things, other options. But you have to weigh the advantage and disadvantage. For example, text presentation or textual method of data presentation is the main method to convey information as it explains the result and trend. It shows the result and trend. It also provides contextual information. Textual method shows contextual information. Therefore, here in the textual method, the data is presented in the form of paragraph, in the form of sentence. Whereas the tabular method, you could include several other specific issues. Because tables show the information that has been converted into Word, the information that have been converted into numbers or figures. Therefore, tables include different formats of data. It could be in Word. You can present your information in the form of Word in the tables. You can also present numbers. The tables are, however, most appropriate for presenting individual information, and they can present both quantitative and qualitative information. In tables, you can present quantitative and qualitative information. That's why we say Tables includes words and numbers. Words and numbers. The strength of tables is that they can accurately present information that cannot be presented in graph, for example. In graph, for example, if there are decimals, numbers represented in the form of decimals, you can present this in the graph. It is difficult to present them in the graph. Whereas in tables, you can write different decimals with no difficulty. Another strength of tables is the information with different units can be presented together. Informations with different units, they can be presented in tables. Tables are also important to summarize and compare quantitative information of different variables. However, the interpretation of information takes long time in tables. It takes long time in tables. Why? The advantages, you can present different forms of information. However, this makes it difficult for making interpretation, of the information. In addition, since all data are of equal importance in tables, it is not easy to make identification or selective choices for the information that are required. It is difficult for making selection and identification of important informations. In the graphical method, graphic method simplifies the context of information. This is one of the problems that we identify in the tabular form, because it gathers different values. It is difficult for making interpretation. Whereas in the graphic presentation simplifies the context of the information by using images and emphasizing the data patterns and trends, and this makes it easy for summarizing, easy for interpretation. Graphs can be used in the place of tables to present small sets of data. However, it presents small sets of data. Unlike the tables, it presents small set of data. The graph format that best presents information must be chosen so that the reader or the reviewers can easily understand the information. Those frequently used graphic formats are scattered plots. We make graph and we make many dots in the graph. This is a scattered plot. It presents data in the X and Y axes. X and Y axes. It presents the data in X and Y axis in the plot. However, there are many dots. Within the graph. Each point represents each individual or object. And an association between the two variables can be studied by analyzing the pattern across the multiple points or dots within the graph. The second usually used form of graph is bar graph or histogram. Bar graph and histogram is used to indicate and compare values, to make a comparison of values in a discrete category or group. You use bar or histogram. Bar or histogram. And if you want to see the frequency or other measurement parameters, you also use bar or histograms. Depending on the number of categories and the size of complexity of each category, bars may be created vertically or horizontally. You can formulate bars horizontal, which are called horizontal, or you can also formulate bars in vertical way. Then in these bars, there is a difference in the length of the bars, the length of the bar. Therefore, the height or the length of the bar shows or represents the amount of information, in that category. Therefore, the height or the length shows amount of information. The third usually used way of graph representation is pie chart. Pie chart is used to represent nominal data, or data classified in different categories. Data classified in different categories. Pie chart, the shape of pie chart is a circle, and with this circle there are divisions like the ambasha of Ethiopian blood. There are different divisions. This is pie chart. Therefore, the pie chart represents the nominal data, like the Corres ambasha, or a piece of the ambasha or bread. It shows it represents the nominal data of that information. It visually represents a distribution of categories. Pie chart shows the distribution of categories. It is generally the most appropriate form of representing information grouped into small numbers of correlations. Therefore, these are the different types of graphic methods, but among these, the mostly used methods of graphic presentation are the scatter plot, the bar graph, the histogram, and the pie chart. You could make a number of lists, but most of them they are used in natural science, or that in research that require detailed statistical interpretations. For the sake of your research, however, these are enough. This is the pie chart. This is the line graph. This is the table, and this is the bar graph. As we said, a graph could also be made in a horizontal way. The length of the graph shows the amount of value. This one is greater than the short group, and this one is also greater than this one. Therefore, the height shows the value or the amount of information in that data. The pie chart, similarly, in the pie chart, the small pieces are smaller than the other section in amount of information. The larger piece includes the biggest part of the information. Therefore, these pieces show the amount of information included in the pie chart. Similarly, line graph, the height, the length shows the amount of the graph. Here it is present in tables, it is presented in numbers, therefore it is not difficult. In the next chapter, we are going to see preparing a research report. Therefore, this is important for you because we are going to present a report, research report. Therefore, what your research should include, or what your research should not include, will be discussed in this part. In addition to this, we will make a summary of the course in this chapter. If you have any question, you can send me a text so that I can give focus based on your questions. If there are sections that are not clear, you can also send me the questions in text. Or if there are other technical issues that you want me to help you, you can also contact me in my phone, or you can send me the text message. This is all for today.
በትምህርት ከፍ ብሎ መብረር ይቻላል። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ከከፍተኛ ትምህርት አግባብነትና ጥራት ኤጀንሲ ሙሉ ዕውቅናን ባገኘንባቸው በማስተርስ ዲግሪ ኤምቢኤ በስትራቴጂክ ማኔጅመንት፣ ኤምቢኤ በባንኪንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ ኤምቢኤ በቢዝነስ ሊደርሺፕ፣ ኤምቢኤ በሪስክና ኢንሹራንስ፣ ኤምኤስሲ በኢንተርናሽናል ትሬድ እና ኢኮኖሚክስ ዘርፎች በእውቀት ለመቅረጽ የበቁ ፕሮፌሰሮቻችን አረንጓዴ መብራታቸውን አብርተዋል። በነገራችን ላይ በኬንያ ሀገር ከሚገኙ ስመጥር ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች በሚመጡ ፕሮፌሰሮች የትኩረት መስክ ትምህርቶቹ መሰጠታቸው ልዩ ያደርገናል። በምርጥ የትምህርት ስርዓት የተገነባው ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ በመጀመሪያ ዲግሪ በአቪዬሽን ማኔጅመንት፣ በሆቴል ማኔጅመንት፣ በአካውንቲንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ በማርኬቲንግ ማኔጅመንት አስተማማኝ ትምህርት ይገቢውና ራስዎንና ሀገሮን ይለውጡ። አድራሻ 22 አደባባይ ወደ ሾላ በሚወስደው መንገድ ላይ። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ህልሞን እውን ያደርጋል።